Hey everyone, it's Jason. We're going to go how to do compositions of functions. This is where these are the ones where you ask to evaluate a composition of function. So there are two ways to do this. I'm going to show you just one method that I think it's easier to use. So when we evaluate this, we got to understand what this means. So right here we have f of g of -2. That means we're going to take the f function and evaluate it when g is evaluated at -2. So working from inside out, we're going to find g of -2 first, and then use that answer to evaluate the f function. So let's go through the process. We're going to start off by evaluating g of -2. And so g is this function, so we're going to substitute. The substitution is usually what gets people kind of confused. Just make sure, put everything in parentheses, and it should kind of help not confuse you as much. So here you see I'm substituting. I've got this -2, and then in parentheses I put the substitution, and that's going to be cubed plus, and I'm going to put this in parentheses as well. It's important. I'm going to kind of explain that in just a second. But this is the substitution. There is a difference between this and this. So make sure that you don't confuse the two. This means the opposite of 2 squared. This means -2 to the second power. So when you substitute, make sure you use those parentheses to substitute that way. So let's follow the orders of operations. We're going to evaluate -2 cubed first. So that's going to be -2 times -8 plus -2 squared, which is 4. And we're going to keep going. -2 times -8 is -16, positive 16. Jason, not negative. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Plus 4. And so that gives me 20. So once I have 20, I'm not done. I now have to go back and do f of 20. So let's do that. F of 20. F is this function. So we get 2 times 20 plus 4. 2 times 20 is 40 plus 4. And that's 44. So that's the process. Evaluate the first function, then use that answer in the second function. So let's look at this next example. So in the next example, people get confused about this because they want to use both functions. Well, don't just use what you're asked to use. Here you're asked to use g of g. So we're doing g of -2. So we're going to evaluate g when g has been evaluated at -2. That's basically how this reads. So we don't even need that. That's just extra informations that you don't need and don't use. So start off with g of -2. And here's the g function. So we got 4 parentheses -2. That's our substitution. Plus 2. 4 times -2 is -8. Plus 2. That gives us -6. And so now we're going to evaluate again when g is -6. And so we'll do 4 parentheses -6 plus 2. 4 times -6 is -24 plus 2 gives us -22. So you just follow those orders of operations, substitute correctly. It's not a big deal. All right, last one. I just want to use this one because I want to emphasize this substitution. People get a little confused with the substitution, so I want you to understand that we're doing f of g of -2. So let's start off with g of -2. This is where people get a little confused about this negative. They want to put the negative and just say that since this is negative and I'm substituting into this, that they just do this. Be careful. This is negative or the opposite of -2 squared. This is how the substitution should look. And so we're going to evaluate that. -2 squared is 4. So we have the opposite of 4 minus 1, which is -5. And now we're going to go and evaluate f at -5. So that's going to be 2 times -5 minus 1. 2 times -5 is 10 minus 1, negative 11. So that's the process for doing these composite functions, evaluating them for certain values. Let me know if you're still a little confused or you still need some additional help, and I'll try to find you some additional resources.